After the last video, people asked if you were taller than me, because you look taller than me in the last video.
I am very much not taller than you.
So I tried to raise the level of my stool a little bit, but then it's hard to get both of our heads in the frame at the same time. So I have to sit just a little lower than you.
Yeah.
But your stool's up higher, right?
Yeah, my stool's like up, like, okay, so my stool's like here and his is like here.
So everybody knows you're not taller than me now.
I am not.
Okay, so we saw episodes 15, 16, and 17 of Season 1 of Jujutsu Kaisen. And in episode 15, this Kyoto sister school event starts, right?
Yeah.
And it really, gets started. Like, the episode opens up, and they pretty much just run into the forest to start the competition.
Yeah, they just kind of go guns blazing.
And we find out that they had this plan. They had this plan to hold off Aoi. Toto Aoi or Aoi Toto, depending on how you want to order the name. He's a pretty tough guy, right?
Yeah, but anytime I hear the name Toto, I think of the dog from Wizard of Oz. Yeah, so I just picture this big old buff dog.
But that's Toto with the T. He's Toto with the D. But I'll call him Aoi, because Aoi seems like a good name for a guy who likes to hurt people. But we find out that, the Tokyo team had a plan before the event started. And their plan was for Yuji to hold off Aoi just to, buy time while they went around and did the rest of the demon hunting or whatever. So what do you think of that plan? Before you saw them, start fighting, did you have any thoughts on, because Aoi's this huge, massive guy, but we also know Yuji is, super strong. So did you have any thoughts on if he'd be able to hold him off or if it'd be about an even fight? What did you think before they got into the battle? Because it opens with Yuji just, kneeing him really hard in the face.
Well, I didn't think that he was going to win, but I didn't think he was going to die immediately. I came in with the assumption that he's going to last a while, at least enough time for them to do what they needed to do. Now,
did you for a moment think maybe they would become BFFs right away?
No, not at all. But I was thinking about, the whole, we've seen in the Juju Strolls, what his type of girl was, so I want to know what Aoi would think about that. I didn't think they were going to be, best buds, though.
What it comes down to, because, right after the initial, they exchange, maybe just a couple of blows, the knee to the face, and then maybe a punch or a kick or something to get even. And Aoi asks him what type of girl he likes. And apparently his answer is the exact answer Aoi wanted, so he declares that they're best friends.
Yeah.
Did you have any thoughts on, I don't quite know what Yuji's making of all this. I mean, it's pretty clear at this point Toto has a couple of screws loose. Mm-hmm. But how do you think Yuji is handling suddenly being declared best friends with this guy he just met?
Well, he sums it up perfectly. But we just met 2 seconds ago. He doesn't know anything about Aoi. He just met Aoi, and he's already trying to, kill him. So,
Now, do you think there's actually something, specifically wrong with Aoi's brain? He's weird.
I don't think there's anything specifically wrong with him. I think he's just kind of odd.
And also, when he asks what kind of girl Yuji likes, he says a tall girl. And then he says, Jennifer Lawrence. Is Jennifer Lawrence tall? I've never met her, but I never got I thought she's average height.
Well, I'm short, so everybody to me is tall. But, I mean, she's probably average height. I don't pay attention to Jennifer Lawrence's life.
Well, she's from Kentucky, and I mean, maybe she played basketball when she was growing up being from Kentucky. That made her taller than I realized.
Jennifer Lawrence on point guard.
I'm thinking Lisa Leslie, Cheryl Swoops. Those are tall ladies. When the fight gets started between the two, and then Aoi decides they're best friends, suddenly the entire Kyoto team surrounds Yuji. They kind of ambush him. And Mekamuro's pointing his laser blaster thing in his palm. I think Miwa's already drawn her sword and taken a swipe at him. I'm pretty sure that Mai has pulled her gun out. Mm-hmm. And then suddenly, Aoi claps his hands, and they just immediately switch places. Yuji is up in a tree, and Aoi's in the middle of everybody. I didn't quite know what happened when that happened. It was so quick, and I didn't quite get the explanation until I watched it the second time around. Did you figure it out right away?
No, I wasn't fully paying attention right at this point. I was checking my phone, and I hear a clap, and then I look up, what was that? And people are like, what just happened? And I'm like, What did I miss? I like blinked.
And, I didn't know, was this a power that Yuji had that I didn't know about, or was this Todo's power, Aoi's power? So it took me till the second time through for it to be clear to me that it was Aoi who did this, and then he basically threatened to, kill his own team for getting in his way while he was working on whatever he's working on with Yuji. That I'm starting to really like. I mean, he's crazy. Don't get me wrong. Aoi's crazy, but I'm kind of starting to like him here in this episode 15.
He's chaotic neutral, He does whatever he wants that benefits him, but in the most chaotic way possible.
I think he's chaotic crazy. I don't even know if he's neutral. It's I'm a lawful coward. He's chaotic crazy.
Yeah.
Now, as they start to fight, and they're still fighting even though they're allegedly best friends now. And I guess that's weird to me. If you're best friends, I would think you wouldn't want to fight anymore, right?
Yeah, but I think in Aoi's eyes, he's trying to, help Yuji get better.
That did catch my attention. He's actually, it's the first time it feels like. I know Nanami sort of was in a role to mentor him, and Gojo was sort of in a role to mentor him. But this seems like the first time to me that anybody has taught Yuji, some practical knowledge for his techniques.
Yeah. Gojo told him what to do, but nobody actually showed him and, had him implement it, like Aoi has.
And when Aoi declares him his best friend, he has this flashback to when they were in school together, and also that idol from television, Takata, I think is her name. She's in school and he's asking Yuji if he should tell Takata that he loves her or something like that. And I was a little lost on that too. Aoi is so crazy here, he's absolutely remembering something that didn't happen, right? I mean, this never happened.
I think it's a daydream fantasy thing that he's got
going on. It's a daydream that was like a memory. And then Takata turns him down because she has her eyes on another man. And then somehow in Aoi's messed up brain, he thinks that other man might be him.
Yeah, but then for some reason, Yuji in this fantasy slaps him back to reality, which isn't reality, telling him, no.
With Aoi, do you know what I think I've got now?
What?
A new favorite character. How many does that make? 6 or 7? I've lost count.
All of them.
Now, episode 16, this was Battle 2 was the name of it. Kyoto Sister Event Battle 2. Now, the biggest part of this episode was the battle between Mekamaru and Panda. And I was kind of looking forward to this because the first thing I thought was, well, the Tokyo team has a panda and the Kyoto team has a robot, so they each have their weird non-human member, but we get to learn all about exactly what these two sorcerers are in this fight. Any thoughts when the fight first started? Were you eager for it, or were you wanting to get back to maybe what was going on with Yuji, or were you really curious here? What were you thinking about when this fight started between these two?
I was excited to finally learn how the panda came to be. I was like, oh, this is going to be the origin story episode of the panda, why he can talk, and that was so cool.
Well, we found out that Panda is a cursed corpse, which means he's like a puppet with cursed energy, which is cool. I mean, they actually make the story interesting, but I was kind of bummed. I wanted to think he was actually just a panda who could talk and do jujutsu sorcery.
Well, you got to think about this. They kind of have real-world logic-ish.
Way more realistic for a puppet to have jujutsu sorcery powers than a panda bear.
Yeah.
Panda thinks that Mekamaru is also a cursed corpse, but Mekamaru tells him that's not quite the case, right?
Yeah. Mekamaru's he's jealous of the cursed corpse, I think is what he said.
Well, Mekamaru can't go outside, but the cursed corpse can. So we're going to get into exactly what the nature is of Mekamaru. And we also learn pretty much everything about Panda's origin story, and that even though Panda is a cursed corpse, he sort of contains the spirit of 3 curses. He has a sister and a brother. And Panda is the one that has the balance, the sister is shy and doesn't come out much, and then we're going to find out that the brother was a gorilla, because we will go into gorilla mode. But this really tricks Mekamaru in more than one way, because the way to kill a cursed corpse is to attack its cursed energy core, but Panda, unbeknownst to Mekamaru, has 3 energy cores, because there are 3 cursed energy entities inside of Panda. I thought that was a pretty big revelation. It explains what makes Panda so special, why he's not just another cursed corpse.
Yeah, that's really interesting, especially when all that was left that was usable was the gorilla core.
Yeah.
And he went into gorilla mode, and he just, like, got a whole new transformation, like JoJo style, just walking up.
And like in some of the earlier intros, they showed Panda on a building beating his chest like a gorilla, and I thought it was just a cool thing for a panda to be doing, but it made so much more sense when we saw him in gorilla mode.
I didn't even think about that.
And they, like, changed the intro halfway through the season. Did you notice that?
Mm-hmm, they do that sometimes.
I kind of like the first half's intro a little bit better, though, I gotta admit.
There's some animes that, like, they'll change the intro so many times, and there's going to be a certain intro that you're like, oh, you should have stayed with that one.
Panda manages to deduce by the way Mechamaru functions and talks and tells him, I'm not a cursed corpse, that he's like an actual avatar or a proxy sort of puppet that's being controlled by an actual Jujutsu sorcerer that's somewhere else, but probably nearby.
Yeah, I think that was the whole thing, because I'm pretty sure Panda is the only cursed corpse that has its own sentience and is not controlled by someone else.
And we find out that Mechamaru is just, I guess an avatar is really the best thing to call it, right? For somebody named Kokichi Muta. And I'm just going to say Muta, I think, from here on out. But Muta was born with this heavenly pact. And like a heavenly pact means you get one great skill, but to make up for it, you have to have something taken away in another aspect. And we're going to see that by the end of this 3-story arc that we're talking about, 3-episode arc, play out with another one of our characters here. But because he had so much cursed energy, because apparently it takes immense amounts of cursed energy and focus to control Mechamaru the way that he does, but because he has so much power in the cursed energy realm and with cursed technique, to make up for it, he can't feel from the waist down. He's like paralyzed from the waist down. I think one of his arms it only goes to the elbow or something. He's all covered in bandages because his skin is so sensitive that even moonlight hurts his skin. Yeah. And he has to like stay in this dark cave looking place. It looks to me like he's kind of sitting in a bathtub wrapped up like a mummy, and he's just using like remote control curse energy via Mechamaru to interact with the rest of the world. Mm-hmm. You know what this really reminds me of? It really reminds me of something from Invincible, which I don't think you watched. I know your brother watched it and I watched it, but the character Robot in Invincible is very similar to Mechamaru here.
Well, I wouldn't know.
Well, you're going to have to watch Invincible sometime. But I think it's because he's trapped in that bathtub and he's a real person. He's very angry that Panda, a cursed corpse, can go out and live life when he's not even technically alive.
Well, I mean, he is alive. He was a panda at one point. He was just a panda.
I thought he was just a panda puppet.
No,
he was an actual baby panda?
Yeah. I'm pretty sure this dude went out into the wild, took a panda, and just like shoved some cores in there.
Animal cruelty, though?
It's an anime. It's fine.
If you were a panda cub, would you rather be a Jujutsu sorcerer or just live your life eating bamboo as a regular panda?
Probably a Jujutsu sorcerer.
Me too. I think it's a step up. There's no question. Yeah. In fact, I would trade my life right now if I could be a panda that was a Jujutsu sorcerer. What would you think introducing your dad to people and I'm a talking panda with Jujutsu sorcery curse technique?
I wouldn't introduce you to people.
Well, you don't anyway. And then we also find out as Panda loses, his panda core, he loses his sister's core, he's stuck with one core left, and that's the gorilla mode. But then he also is able to focus his cursed energy in a fake spot to serve like as a decoy. So Mechamaru, who isn't really doing that great against Panda. Panda's like brute strength, particularly in gorilla mode. Mm-hmm. He says this, and I don't know if it's something that's changed a little bit in translation, but he said, I could feel that punch all the way to my internals.
Innards.
Yeah, I guess like internal circuits because he wouldn't have organs. But anyway, Panda gets that decoy. Mechamaru makes his last desperate shot, thinks he's taken Panda out, and then Panda comes up and boops him on the nose or whatever, takes Mechamaru out of the competition, and I think he might be the first contestant eliminated.
Yeah, I think so.
Now, in episode 17, we get a couple of more one-on-one battles, because that's really what this 3-episode arc is about. Like, we get, in episode 15, primarily the one-on-one battle between Aoi and Yuji, and Aoi decides to teach Yuji, so I'm going to call that one like a tie or a draw, because suddenly they're working together. Even though they're fighting, it's more like sparring, right? Mm-hmm. Then we have Panda and Mechamaru in episode 16. Panda takes out Mekamaru. And then in episode 17, we get to see Nobara fight against Momo, the one that's on the broomstick. And then we get to see Maki have a pretty good fight with two different people. She fights with Miwa, the one with the blue hair, and with her twin sister, of course. Mm-hmm. So this 3-episode arc really shows everybody in some one-on-one battles, shows what they can do. But most importantly, even though we're seeing the fighting, I don't think it's really about the fights. I think it's like a character exploration, because we learn the backstory on a lot of characters here. We learned a lot about Panda and Mekamaru. Then when Miwa and Maki fight, we don't really learn a whole lot here other than Miwa she's poor and she wants to hurry up and go up in a grade so she can start to make money.
Yeah, and I think it also starts to introduce like the hierarchy and the struggles that the women face as Jujutsu sorcerers.
Momo certainly makes a big point of that, but then Nobara kind of thinks that she's making too big of a deal out of it too.
Yeah, I think like Momo's talking about how much of a struggle it is, and I think Nobara is that might be what she does, is try and like break that cycle, you know?
Yeah. And in episode 17, we learn a lot about Maki and Mai's background too. Mm-hmm. But with the fight between Miwa and Maki, we see that Maki has maybe a little bit more to her than we thought. I mean, she was introduced as someone who could only use cursed weapons, like cursed objects, and didn't have any cursed energy. But then we find out that she has her own heavenly pact. And she's like the opposite of what we saw with Mekamaru.
Yeah.
Because she has incredibly weak, almost absent cursed energy. I think you could say it is absent. She can't even see curses without glasses. Mm-hmm. But to make up for that, she has incredible superhuman strength. And I'm wondering, like, is she maybe even stronger than Yuji's superhuman strength? We don't quite know yet. But she takes out Miwa because Miwa isn't expecting her to have that ability to flip her with Aikido and then take her sword away from her and bop her on the back of the head with her own sword.
Yeah.
And that takes Miwa pretty much out of the competition. And then we see the Zenin clan. And we'd heard before this mention of the Zenin bloodline in relation to Fushiguro. Mm-hmm. I guess that means they're all part of this same clan, which we understand is one of like the 3 big clans. But do you think he's actually like related to Maki and Mai? Or is he just from that same clan? Like, I don't know if that means they're cousins or if it's just because of where they're from, or the bloodline might go back 100 generations. So it's like they're not related at all. But I was just kind of curious if you had thoughts on that.
I think it's probably more of a community, not really a family. Like, they might be related, but I think it's more of where they came from.
Almost like a mafia family or a Yakuza family, the Zenin clan.
The Zenin clan's the Yakuza of the Jujutsu world.
We do find out, though, that the Zenin clan considers twins to be bad fortune, and then they're very disappointed in Maki because of her apparent lack of cursed energy, but then Mai is afraid of the curses because she can see them and Maki can't see them. So we see Maki and Mai being supportive of each other when they're young, but then Maki gets so upset with her family that she leaves the family and goes off to Jujutsu sorcery school on her own. And because she leaves the family in the way that she did, Mai is kind of forced to go into Jujutsu sorcery also, even though she didn't want to. And it's because of that whole way that things played out that Mai hates Maki so much.
Yeah.
And we really kind of get a glimpse into the sympathetic side of Mai when Maki's fighting against Miwa. And I just got to say, too many M's here. There's Megumi, Miwa, Maki, Mai, Mekamaru. Did I miss any M's? Momo? I'm dying with all the M names.
There's so many.
But when Maki is fighting with Momo, no, it's when Nobara is fighting with Momo.
Yeah, Nobara.
When Nobara is fighting with Momo and she talks about how she hates Mai. And Nobara finds out from Momo what a bad, kind of harsh background that Mai had, and that actually she's stronger than you realize and she's not as mean as you think. But then Nobara still goes and defeats Momo. And this is when Momo's talking about how all the problems that a female faces as a Jujutsu sorcerer.
Yeah. Also, when Momo's talking about all the stuff that Mai went through, Nobara's like, hey, Maki went through that too.
Yes.
You know? And I think that took Momo by surprise. She's like, oh yeah, I guess she did.
I also like, and I don't know how you like this, but I love Nobara's weapon, that hammer where she like hits the nails and the nails fly like projectiles. And she's like firing away with that hammer. And it looks, in Momo's mind, she's outflying the shots and dodging them all. But what she actually did was like hit them all into trees all around Momo. And then she sets her cursed energy through them and they all go off, disrupting her flight. She jumps up, grabs one of the straws from her broom and puts basically cursed technique and cursed energy through that straw so that the broom won't work anymore and more or less takes Momo out.
Yeah.
And I think she has a great little monologue when she's finally unleashing her true power on Momo. And she says, I like myself when I'm pretty, like you say, I'm pretty and I'm dressed up. And I also like myself when I'm kicking butt. I love myself the way I am. And she just literally lays the hammer down on her.
Squeaky hammer.
Yeah, I love that too. What did you think about that switch of the lethal hammer for the squeaky hammer at the end? Like, does she always carry a squeaky hammer just in case?
I guess so. It was really funny, especially because they even added the squeak every time she hit
Yes.
her. It went squeak.
Now, we see this teacher. We go back to, like, the teachers that are observing the battle and everything, keeping score, and we hear Gojo talking a little bit. And we see this teacher named Mei Mei. She's the one who's in charge of monitoring everything, but she conveniently doesn't monitor what's going on with Yuji when they're trying to kill him.
Do you think she's in on the deal?
I don't know, but she says money is all that matters. Like, I'll do anything for money. What's the point of doing anything if it's not for money? Don't you remember her saying all that? And I'm thinking she's like the opposite. I keep talking about like these mirror images, these echoes, these reflections. Like Mekamaru is kind of the opposite with his heavenly pact from Maki. And now I'm thinking this Mei Mei is like the opposite of Namini. Because she'll do anything for money. And Namini got disgusted with working only for money. And even though being a Jujutsu sorcerer sucks, at least he felt he could do something good there. So she's like the opposite of him. His mirror image, his reflection. And I think if we're looking for a traitor in their midst, because, a few episodes back, Gojo said he thinks that maybe somebody is working with the curses. I think she's a prime suspect to be a traitor if she's so motivated by money and nothing else.
I don't know if she would work with curses, though. I don't think she likes them that much.
At the very least, it's a red herring thrown out there because she's obviously turning her eye the other way in exchange for money in the Kyoto Sister School event.
Yeah.
Now, what do you think about Mai's cursed technique? Because, first off, you got people with a weapon that's a hammer, you got somebody with a weapon that's a sword, you got somebody who carries a bow, but just having a gun as your weapon...
I mean...
That's
very
not
practical.
It is very practical. But what I like is once a day, and only once a day, she can make a bullet out of out of cursed energy. Like she can manifest one bullet per day out of cursed energy. So she shoots the 6 bullets in her 6-shooter. People think she's out of bullets, and then she can manifest that last one. And she pulls this trick with her twin sister Maki, because Maki's slicing through all the bullets. But then when she fires that last bullet, Maki's able to catch it and basically take her down. And that was a pretty triumphant moment, but I was wondering if she didn't catch that bullet, was that a real bullet? Like, would that have killed Maki?
I think so.
That's pretty bloodthirsty from your twin sister. I'm glad I don't have any twin sisters.
See, I've always, I've watched these animes where, it'll be set in, a modern time, and they'll be using swords and stuff, and I'm like, why don't you just get a gun?
Because swords are cool, that's why.
Yeah, but guns are faster and easier.
I own way more swords than I own guns, because swords are cool. So, did you have a favorite battle from these 3 episodes?
I like the one between Panda and Mekamaru.
It certainly felt like the most epic. I think my favorite was probably just because the visuals. I like Nobaru versus Momo, and I kind of like Nobaru's big exclamation at the end, plus the squeaky hammer. I'm a sucker for squeaky hammers, you know that. Which character do you think we learned the most about?
Once again, probably Panda.
You think Panda?
Yeah, we learned literally how he was created.
I think the one we learned the least about was Fushiguro, Megumi.
He wasn't even there, really.
I know, so maybe in these next episodes we get to learn a lot about Megumi, because Fushiguro's the one that I had so many questions about. Mm-hmm. So I guess we'll have to watch the next couple of episodes and then report back. How does that sound?
Mm-hmm, that works.
All right, goodbye.
Bye.